Accident of Choice by Literally Mad Lad on AO3. Episode 2, Chapter 2, Releasing the Kraken into his lovely underground enclosure. After the tube was drained and turned on its side, Deku and his assistant pulled Katsuki out by the arms. Katsuki climbed into the cart, his tail haphazardly colliding in after him. The solid weight of it only grew as Deku and his assistant continued to pile in the excess of his fins as quickly as they could. The tube was turned upright once more, and as it began to refill with water, they made their way with Katsuki. From the facility, Katsuki was transported by truck through a series of deserted roads. Deku remained in the back of the truck, spritzling him down with some water where the small inflatable pool didn't submerge him. It was barely half full, and the bumps on the road made it even less so. Deku lifted the lid of the cooler that smelled like the greatest present in the world: sea bass. Katsuki reached out past the ledge of the kiddie pool. Sharp teeth blared. Deku tipped the cooler towards him and let the fish slobber out. Katsuki grabbed the nearest one, with the favor of starving the man. All the while, Deku and his assistant were talking. Her name was Momo, but Katsuki preferred to call her the assistant, or when she pissed him off, the accomplice. She was talking about a charter boat, of which Deku was dismissed. Eventually, they were peeling into ships out back to Peru, but the circumstances were complicated. For one, they didn't have a willing captain yet, so they needed to bribe their time. And two, the Peruvian caves were under intense scrutiny now. The changes of slip Katsuki during the midst of the exam were slim to none. It would likely be another year before they could return Katsuki to his natural habitat. Katsuki listened, eyes blinking slowly, the thin layer of membrane sticking out as he began to dry out. Deku missed his face, and when Katsuki could see again, the idiot was smiling at him. Deku's warm, callous fingers pressed against Katsuki's cheeks. Katsuki's eyes wide shut, the other watching. He was tensed, but this was nothing like the examination table. This was gentle. Even when Deku's thumb fanned across the faint marking underneath Katsuki's eyes. When he lowered his hand, he did so to sign. Thank you for trusting me. Katsuki had yet to finish the bass. With a half-eaten fish in one hand, Katsuki half-signed. Don't mention it. When they reached their destination, the truck's headlights cut through a dark, quiet forest. The assistant pulled the truck in park and twisted around to peer through the mesh covering between the front and the back. We're here, she said. The back of the truck was propped open, with the assistant in front and Deku behind. The two of them marveled Katsuki's inflatable kiddie pool out of the truck. There were bugs carrying off in the distance in a category of winds and buzzing. The forest was pitch black beyond the truck's headlights, but Katsuki could see and hear just how far they were from civilization. The light pollution in the air beyond the capacity was non-existent. It was a new moon. The trek through the bushes was illuminated by a single flashlight as the assistant's hip. They followed the sounds of water trickling, which grew to a muted roar. Deku and the assistant were out of breath the moment they reached the edge of the freshwater river. They set the kiddie pool down for a short while. It had deflated during the journey. One of Katsuki's fins had torn through the plastic. The assistant put her arms on her hips, exhausted, and turned to Deku to say, Which way? Just down here, Deku said, pointing off downstream. As the assistant went to scoop out, Deku kneeled to Katsuki. Katsuki's scales had lost their already faint color again, the iridescent shine gone, or they are now dried out. There's a branch off the river up ahead, just a small opening. One goes off into a lake, and the other goes into an underground saltwater pool. The branch on our side of the river goes to the saltwater pool. Can you go through that? Katsuki nodded. His skin felt like deflated plastic under his scarred fingers. Anything was better than that test tube. Anything was better than staying in the open air like this. Up ahead, the assistant waved her flashlight about and pointed off the rocky ledge where the river split. Deku grabbed one end of the kiddie pool and dragged it closer to the river's edge, until Katsuki's arms slipped into the water. Deku's feet went in up to his kneecaps, and then to his thighs, as the current threatened to take the both of them downstream. Still, Deku treaded ahead. It was too shallow for Katsuki to swim at first, and with Deku clinging to the rocks of the edge, he wouldn't make it deeper water anyways. Deku's shirt was drenched by the time the plastic pool was rigged out from under Katsuki. The water hit him like a rock to the face, and the pebbles grained against the scale of his tail. He currently carried him, though, to where the assistant guided his path with a flashlight to what appeared to be a rock face. The edge of the mid-cliff was dark, and a little too late. He realized why. It was a pit. A tunnel. And they wanted him to go down it. In hindsight, he wondered what might have happened if he picked the freshwater route. He might have perished, eventually, but he wouldn't have wound up where he is now. So much could have been avoided. Damn his will to survive. The pressure sucked him under. He dove headfirst into the tunnel. The instant he was scooped up into the earth, it dawned on him that he might have made the wrong decision. There was no telling whether or not Deku's words were true, and yet, like an idiot, he took Deku at face value. The smooth rock underneath him dropped out. His hand skidded off the edge. He tumbled over and his tail trailed after him in a spiral of pale gray through the air. Just as it occurred to him that he might hit the ground, his hands smashed through water. The water pierced through his gills, temporarily winding him. His tail snapped into the water behind him, and for the first time in nearly 5 years, Katsuki could swim. He let himself sink. It took several moments for him to process that he could stretch his arms out, or that he could furl his tail. Every knot in his muscle and every kink in his spine seemed to pop in a cascading down until he couldn't straighten anymore. It cramped away midway his tail, and a spike of pain shot down the rest of the way. He glided to the side to examine the damage. The end of his tail was particularly stuck in a shape of a spiral. His fins had grown lopsided. Just as he was tidying up the damage, his back hit something solid. The ground. The ground was uneven and rocky. He followed it up every edge and crevice, which was far more than he had explored in recent years. There was a small gap near the bottom, which led through a narrow civic he could barely fit himself through. On the other end, he could see what appeared to be an additional cave where the rock split open. He reached an arm out through the gap, but ultimately couldn't see beyond the narrow space ahead. When he turned back, he went to the surface. It was his first view of the cave Deku had mentioned, and with it came a sense of awe. It was shallow, and the ceiling was etched in places as if it were man-made. But Deku knew that wasn't entirely true. The water washed up to the very walls of the cave, and what appeared to be a walkway built out of wood. The platform foundation was made of concrete, which Katsuki followed down the bottom of the pool. A portion of it looked removable, and try as he might, he wouldn't wedge his fingers into the slits. At the surface, he reached for the wooden slab, only to jerk back at the abrupt sound of something slamming shut. A pair of metal hinges creaked, loud enough to pierce his ears and sending him back ducking into the water. Were they people? It certainly sounded like people, so Katsuki retreated back to the gap near the waterfall that he had dove off. The waterfall had reduced to a fine trickle, though, which bubbled overhead at Katsuki's tail, coiling back underneath him, small and compact, within the safety of the cave. When he studied the surface of the water, he found 2 silhouettes walking along the wooden planks on the edge of the pool where Katsuki had been just minutes before. Katsuki sunk back further, the rocks digging into his scales and flesh as he did. Anything was better than being seen. But then, a beam of light cut through the water, illuminating every speck between Katsuki and the people watching him. Katsuki squinted against the lights, turning his face against the rocks, like that would stop him from being seen. He was pale in comparison to his surroundings. He stood out like nothing else the instant the light caught him. Shorter chapter, but it's not a shorter chapter. There's still that other half of the chapter. I'm cutting it here because I'm not even supposed to be recording right now. I have been hella busy with a lot of stuff lately. currently we're looking about moving, and then all that stuff is happening, and like it's not like if we're moving, we are moving. We don't know if we're moving this month, next month, or the month after. But we're definitely moving within the next couple months, right? So I'm getting everything ready. I'm making sure that everything's packed and that we're ready, that the second we find another house, we go there. Because this place sucks ass. It is a really old, really decrepit house. We can't use the front door. The front door is absolutely banged up. To open it, it's a hassle. To lock it is a hassle. It's just constantly locked and constantly closed. We have to enter through the back door every time every time without fail. It's horrid. It's horrible. It's horrendous. Horrendous. But anyways, I'm not supposed to be recording right now. It's late. I was supposed to be packing up. I'm doing this last minute. A lot of things are happening, okay? I'm busy as is. Anyways, but this is a really interesting chapter. Obviously, we know that it's going to be Izuku and Momo. Also, I predicted it. Momo is the assistant. Thank you very much. I am a genius. Guys, I'm a genius. Okay, so it makes sense on why they wouldn't be able to return him right away. I'm actually worried if they'll be able to return him at all. Especially considering how his tail is being described. I'm sorry. That literally sounds like as if I'm sorry. I'm a little concerned because will his tail be able to go back to normal? Will he be able to actually be out in the wild? Or is he just forever fucked? Because that's the thing about animals who, who hunt and stuff like that, right? I'm considering him not an animal. Humans are animals anyways. But in the sense of, like, he hunts for his food. It's not like he goes and buys groceries and shit, right? But he has been in an environment where people give him food. I'm not saying he's not smart and he can't do it. But I mean, he's also been in an environment where it made his tail like that. He has not been in a physical environment where his body physically can handle hunting down for food daily or weekly, right? Probably daily, right? He's not been in that type of environment. So I'm a little concerned about taking him back to nature, because when it happens to animals where, they're really smart animals, wolves, foxes, owls, right? Super smart animals, really intelligent. But if they get injured as, babies or, young, and they get raised in captivity because of their injury, and like they get raised a bit, the likelihood that they're gonna be able to be brought back into, nature are very low. If a fox breaks its leg and it spends its fundamental years where it's supposed to be learning to hunt and all that stuff, being mouth-fed, that fox is not going to be, taken back to the wilderness. Same with owls. Same with dolphins. Same with any animal, really. If it's raised in captivity because of an injury, and it is no longer seen fit to be able to hunt outside of its own means, most likely, it's not going to happen. Birds whose wings get broken when they're little and get raised, once their wing is fully developed and fully good, they don't release them back half the time, because the risk of that animal dying outside in the wilderness is really big. In this case, I'm scared that Katsuki's not going to be able to make it. Obviously, he's probably going to be able to make it, but like, his tail. I'm scared about the damage that they did, right? And my heart goes out to Katsuki, right? And the damage that happened to his tail, because I hope that could be reversible and that could be treated and stuff. Because if it's irreversible damage, I don't think he'll be able to fully be out in the wilderness. I'm not saying he won't be able to. I'm saying that he'll always have to rely on other people, whether it be other mermaids and sea folk or other humans, right? Deku and Momo specifically. But it's alarming. That's all I'm saying. It's alarming. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.